Hello, online pipe community. Ethan, once more together with,
Butter Piper.
and we are going to be doing letter 30 of C.S. Lewis' Screwtape letters about endurance. Butter Piper, take it away.
My dear Wormwood, I sometimes wonder whether you think you have been sent into the world for your own amusement. I gather not from your miserably inadequate report, but from that of the infernal police that the patient's behavior during the first raid has been the worst possible. He has been very frightened and thinks himself a great coward, and therefore feels no pride. But he has done everything his duty demanded and perhaps a bit more. Against this disaster, all you can produce on the credit side is a burst of ill temper with a dog that tripped him up, some excessive cigarette smoking, and the forgetting of a prayer. What is the use of whining to me about your difficulties? If you are proceeding on the enemy's idea of justice and suggesting that your opportunities and tensions should be taken into account, then I am not sure that a charge of heresy does not lie against you. At any rate, you will soon find that the justice of hell is purely realistic and concerned only with results. Bring us back food or be food yourself. The only constructive passage in your letter is where you say that you still expect good results from the patient's fatigue. That is well enough, but it won't fall into your hands. Fatigue can produce extreme gentleness and a quiet of mind and even something like vision. If you have often seen men led by it into anger, malice, and impatience, that is because those men have had efficient tempers. The paradoxical thing is that modern fatigue is a better soil for peevishness than absolute exhaustion. This depends partly on physical causes, but partly on something else. It is not fatigue simply as such that produces the anger, but unexpected demands on a man already tired. Whatever men expect, they soon come to think they have a right to. The sense of disappointment can, with very little skill on our part, be turned into a sense of injury. It is after men have given in to the irremediable, after they have despaired of relief and ceased to think even a half an hour ahead, that the dangers of humbled and gentle weariness begin. To produce the best results from the patient's fatigue, therefore, you must feed him with false hopes. Put into his mind plausible reasons for believing that the air raid will not be repeated. Keep him confronting himself with the thought of how much he will enjoy his bed next night. Exaggerate the weariness of making him think it will soon be over. For men usually feel that a strain could have been endured no longer at the very moment when it is ending or when they think it is ending. In this, as in the problem of cowardice, the thing to avoid is the total commitment. Whatever he says, let his inner resolution be not to bear whatever comes to him, but to bear it for a reasonable period. And let the reasonable period be shorter than the trial is likely to last. It'll not, it need not be much shorter in attacks on patience, chastity, and fortitude. The fun is to make the man yield just when, had he but known it, relief was almost in sight. I do not know whether he is likely to meet the girl under conditions of strain or not. If he does, make full use of the fact that up to a certain point, fatigue makes women talk more and men talk less. Much secret resentment, even between lovers, can be raised from this. Probably the scenes he is now witnessing will not provide material for an intellectual attack on his faith. Your previous failures have put that out of your power. But there is a sort of attack on the emotions which can still be tried. It turns on making him feel when first he sees human remains plastered on a wall that this is what the world is really like and that all his religion has been a fantasy. You will notice that we have got them completely fogged about the meaning of the word real. They tell each other of some great spiritual experience. All that really happened was that you heard some music in a lighted building. Here, real means the bare physical facts, separated from the other elements in the experience they actually had. On the other hand, they will also say it is all very well discussing that high dive as you sit here in an armchair, but wait till you get up there and see what it is really like. Here, real is being used in the opposite sense to mean not the physical facts, which they know already while discussing the matter in armchairs, but the emotional effect those facts will have on a human consciousness. Either application of the word could be defended, but our business is to keep the two going at once so that the emotional value of the word real can be placed now on one side of the account, now on the other, as it happens to suit us. The general rule, which we have now pretty well established among them, is that in all experiences which can make them happier or better, only the physical facts are real, while the spiritual elements are subjective. In all experiences which can discourage or corrupt them, the spiritual elements are the main reality, and to ignore them is to be an escapist. Thus, in birth, the blood and pain are real, the rejoicing a mere subjective point of view. In death, the terror and ugliness reveal what death really means. The hatefulness of a hated person is real. In hatred, you see men as they are, you are disillusioned, but the loveliness of a loved person is merely a subjective haze concealing a real core of sexual appetite or economic association. Wars and poverty are really horrible. Peace and plenty are mere physical facts about which men happen to have certain sentiments. The creatures are always accusing one another of wanting to eat the cake and have it. But thanks to our labors, they are more often in the predicament of paying for the cake and not eating it. Your patient, properly handled, will have no difficulty in regarding his emotion at the sight of human entrails as a revelation of reality, and his emotion at the sight of happy children or fair weather as mere sentiment. Your affectionate Uncle Screwtape.
Well, let's dive right in where Lewis begins, having Screwtape discussing what amounts to an attack on the patient's endurance. That there's a sense of these, and he uses the London air raids because this was done during World War II. This sense that these air raids, they can't go on forever. They must be ending soon. There won't be another one. I'll get to sleep tonight. So he uses this as the example his audience would be able to relate. But we've all been there in some form or other. This illness can't go on forever. Uh, Even though some of us have chronic illnesses that of which we are never going to be cured. Whatever situation I'm in, it can't last much longer, can it? And to give the patient this false sense of hope, um, or a false sense of confidence, really, that this is going to end really soon, and then to undermine that by having it drag on longer than the patient expects. Well, Paul in Romans 5 tells us that suffering builds endurance, and endurance, character, and character, hope. This is exactly the chain that Screwtape wants Wormwood to break. He does not want this suffering to be able to build endurance. And so he talks about fatigue, and this can be a physical or emotional fatigue. It's the weariness that our endurance has to break through. He doesn't want Wormwood to wear the patient out too much because complete exhaustion shows us the limitations of our own personal resources and points us to relying on something else. And in this case, Screwtape's enemy, God. he does not want that. He wants to break that chain, and so he says, keep him tired, but don't let him get too tired. We all know that when we're tired, but not to the point of just falling asleep tired, we're more irritable. We expect not to have extra demands laid on us. Well, this is exactly what Screwtape wants Wormwood to do, is to use this tiredness to be able to bring out anger and and bad behavior toward others, whether it's toward his girlfriend or anyone else, that he be able to use this tiredness against him, but not let it get so much that he begins to rely on God. And so this is, like I said, this is an attack on endurance, and endurance is one of those things that that Christians should work on, that we should be building toward, because of the way endurance eventually brings us to hope.
And as you're talking about endurance, and I was thinking, and Lewis is talking about how does Screwtape use this exhaustion? How does he use fatigue? And I continue to appreciate how Lewis, in these letters, points out how like Screwtape never wants us to go to one. He always wants to keep us befuddled within the fence. Always kind of to be, don't get him too fatigued because he might go here. Like in the last letter, don't let him get, don't let him experience his cowardice so much that, and he actually mentions it in this one where there's no pride. So I appreciated how we look at the fatigue and the exhaustion. You brought up St. Paul and the importance of endurance because, especially, I'd say in the States, maybe more in the Western world, within reason, but you know, we haven't experienced necessarily within a number of decades, at least, the suffering that they were experiencing, you know, in World War One and Two, and where a lot of times today, you know, challenges, suffering is the enemy today. You know, if I take this pill, I won't have to do this. Um, I'll buy this so I don't have this challenge, and you know, but yet, as you quoted St. Paul, without challenges or suffering, how are we going to grow in character? How are we going to grow in endurance? And that is so key to the, at least in this life, in the spiritual life. Um, that doesn't mean, you know, as a Christian, we don't look for suffering. We don't try to find it. That's a whole nother problem. But as we know, to go the other extreme is a whole nother problem. And to me, you know, talk like as you were talking with, you know, how Lewis is really trying to challenge us to look at today one aspect of fatigue and exhaustion. How does Screwtape want to use it? Is to really be able to think and to discern my own daily life, and how do I allow fatigue or exhaustion to irritate me enough where I become, as you said, become irritable at those people that are in my life that are responsible for, or just going to the supermarket. And you know, I was thinking about how, you know, everybody's buying stuff. We're getting, you know, we're in this time of year of preparing for Christmas, and everybody's buying. They're going to the stores. They're getting their food, and you know, how many people do we bump into in the supermarket who are irritable themselves? We get into the line, and let's say when we get to the cashier seems to be a little irritable themselves, a little bad mood. And it's at that point where I can just snap at that person instead of being able to maybe take a few seconds and say, maybe the irritable people that I had encountered were, that cashier had to experience that irritability. And maybe I can take that few seconds and say, you know what? Did you have a tough day today? Not take my irritability out on someone else. And so I appreciated that sense of endurance of really being able to try to look at how does Screwtape trying to use my time or lack thereof of whatever I think that reality might look like, and how is he trying to use my irritability, my exhaustion, my fatigue, the time I believe I have a right to. He's talked about in other other letters, and how is he trying to use all of that within myself?
Well, and something that you had brought up that also touches on, you had brought up in our pre-recording chat, is his final focus. And this is a return to a theme of divorcing the physical and spiritual mentally in our minds in terms of this long suffering that we confuse the notion of what we can see being real and the spiritual being false or being subjective, when in fact Screwtape acknowledges obviously the reality, the very reality of the spiritual realm, and we very often don't. We very often look at the spiritual things as not being as real as those things that we have in front of us that we can see. And he can wind this right back around into attacking our endurance.
The and when I was reading the letter, I was trying because I saw 2 points like you know, how does Screwtape use fatigue and exhaustion, and then how does he using the what is real, in other words, what the natural world, my natural experiences, um, and the spiritual experiences, and then and I was trying to really look at how is he going from one to the other, and but yet I think I can see it more where if I can look at my irritability at quote the real world, the facts that he's referring to, that the things that I can touch and so forth, if that can be divorced from the spiritual world, which he refers to, he's talking about things of maybe being happy, peaceful, and if I he can we can if he can definitely divorce those two, where the body, the natural world, does not is meant to lead to the spiritual world, where the spiritual world is really more real than if we look at the order of things.
Mm-hmm.
But if he can divorce those two or get one purely subjective, the spiritual and the natural, then it would make sense that he can truly corrupt something as simple as fatigue and exhaustion. He can use that to his own purposes. Then even the simple thing of being in line with the cashier and use in instead of maybe having a few seconds of discernment to say, you know what, I'm not going to use my irritability against the cashier, but maybe just try to address the fact, hey, how are you doing today? Are you having a tough day today? And to be able to go to something that might be more real, where I have experienced irritability, that cashier has experienced irritability, but now let's try to now go to something that's more real, is the fact that this person, what I'm trying to say, I'm trying is they're experiencing something more than irritability. They're maybe experiencing something that is hurtful or I don't know, painful to them. I'm a customer. There's I don't know, serving me. I'm getting a little lost here, but hopefully everybody may be following where I'm not ending up at.
Well,
But yeah,
I think the point there is that when we're in contact with people, we have no idea what's going on in their lives, what People don't have their own truth, but what their reality for in life right now is, and the spiritual battles that they're going through. And so very often we inflict our own troubles, our own irritation on other people unnecessarily. Well, folks, endurance is one of those difficult things, particularly for some folks at this time of year. I know our community has experienced, a number of people have experienced loss, both in Christmas seasons past and this Christmas season. If you're one of those, I do hope that uh, that along with Paul, you will find a peace that certainly does pass our own limited understanding. This is going to post 2 days before Christmas. I do hope that as you move into this Christmas celebration, that God's peace will come into your life, particularly for those of you who are experiencing a really difficult time in this season, and that you will be able to celebrate along with us. Until we return in the new year, light something you like, celebrate Christmas.